Thank you very much, Anthea, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed a privilege to be invited to address you this evening and to deliver this year's Crystal Lecture. And over the next 25 minutes or so, I've been asked to share some of the insights and experience about building a world-class business, or indeed a series of businesses from scratch. Quite a challenge to cover in the allocated time. However, I thought it'd be more entertaining for you if I illustrate the importance of a clear vision and entrepreneurial skills by reference to some of the key milestones in building my businesses over the last 30 years or so. Today, society as a whole is generally cynical and lacking in respect of much to do with business, and particularly, I think, with entrepreneurial business. I can't share my secrets of success to date without sharing some of my views on what needs to change going forward. So, how do you build a world-class business from scratch? Well, you start with a single entrepreneur. That's the difficult part, because what is an entrepreneur? I believe that true entrepreneurs are born and not made. I think we have something inside us that drives us on to want to do for ourselves what we do for others in business. We have a business vision and we pursue it relentlessly, focusing our lives on achieving goals. It is a mission and philosophy and a total way of life. Believe it or not, we don't always do it for the cash. We do it to create something that's long-lasting and substantial. And I'd like to share some of the secrets of success that were not quite so apparent to me 30-odd years ago when I gave up a successful career to pursue a lifelong ambition to run my own business. Since setting out on my own in 1975 with £2,000 of startup capital, the Rigby Group has grown to be an international business with investments in key divisions, technology, airports, hotels, real estate, financial services, and aviation. In my experience, there are three key ingredients for building successful and sustainable businesses. You need vision, you need the entrepreneurial skills to take the competitive advantage, and you need to have the right market environment to do it in. So I started my own business, as I said, some 30 years ago, nearly 40 years ago, in fact. And believe it or not, at that time, it was when IBM launched their first microcomputer. So my own background, in fact, had been in large-scale mainframe computers in a technical and sales capacity, but the micro arrived about 1975. I'd saved a couple of £1,000 from my salary, not a lot of money to go into business with, and one of the first things that I tried to do was borrow some money, and I was told that I'd have to give a second mortgage on my house and so on. And I thought, well, no, the biggest commitment I'm giving is my time and effort and ideas. So I'll do it on my own. I've got £2,000, I'll make it work. I have to say £2,000 is worth a bit more then than it is today. But I had a very clear vision of the business that I wanted to build. And with hindsight, it was very ambitious. I always wanted to build an international technology business that could hold its head up alongside the global manufacturing giants of IBM, Compaq, HP. And I'd worked for that sort of company in a management capacity before going on my own, so I knew what those companies consisted of. And I wanted to have a business that would be in charge of its own destiny. A business committed to bringing the benefits of technology, not only to business, but to a broader community, and which had people at the heart of it. And I cannot stress enough to you how important it is to have a clear vision of where you're going. And to be flexible and open to change, of course, around that vision, which needs to constantly adapt and progress in line with opportunity and performance. Over the years I've been running my own businesses, we've not only survived, but successfully grown over the course of 3 recessions. And I might say none more severe than the recession we've had in Europe and across the globe, in fact, in the last 6 or 7 years. I count a clear vision as being the main anchor that has carried us through these tough times. So let me just take you back to 1975. I was a successful manager in a large American corporation. I was married with 2 young children and a mortgage. And I had big ideas about the business I wanted to build. However, I was determined not to put everything at risk. I had at that time, and importantly, I didn't want to borrow money, as every offer of fund was dependent on providing this security of house and home. So I needed to generate some cash. In fact, to go into the business I wanted, I had to generate a significant amount of cash. So what I did was I used my connections, I used my broad appreciation of the industry, and in a consultative capacity. And even in those early days, getting the right skills into information technology was critical. So I founded a recruitment business, a company I call Specialist Computer Recruitment, where I put in place an international business. It operated into Europe eventually, and it was very cash generative. And I used that cash to fund the type of business that I really wanted to be associated with. I didn't think that recruitment per se was particularly challenging or interesting. But interestingly, SCR still survives today as part of my group, and it extended its remit beyond just simply providing staff for the group and across for other people. So 1982 was the first major milestone in my business, in that I'd accumulated sufficient capital to really start to maximize the opportunities. And with market research predicting the growth in demand for PCs, it was starting to attract the giants, and we were able to form relationships with companies like IBM and Compaq to resell their technologies. And the breakthrough that enabled the launch of SCC, our international technology business, came with the introduction of Intel's 286 microprocessor, which became the industry standard for a common approach to that type of technology. And this followed with the introduction of the IBM PC and the Compaq portable PC, these devices on the screen behind which look quite archaic, but at the time they were the very leading edge of technology. So a clear vision was just as necessary then as it is now. And all this, of course, was before the invention of the World Wide Web, which came 8 years later in the 1990 period. And of course, you know, it's apparent today how pervasive and how essential this digital revolution is. But it was perhaps less obvious going back, because computing was the privilege of large corporations. It wasn't down at a personal level. It was basically large, complex mainframe technology that was the order of the day. So I invested in this. Vision, I have to say, has to be bigger than money. I've always believed that successfully generating money goes hand in hand with putting back into society and the communities in which we do business. My vision has always been to build an international company that placed people and communities at its heart. And as an example one of the early projects I was associated with was the Millennium Point project in Birmingham, a project to build a world-class centre for science and technology. I chaired that project from inception to delivery, and bringing it on time and on budget over a 7-year period. And I was delighted tonight to meet up again with one of your governors, who was also on the board of directors of that project all those years ago. And Millennium Point is one of those successful and sustainable projects. I'm particularly pleased that we were able to bring sound business principles to our charitable endeavours. And again, in 2007, we provided the financial backing and expertise to build the educational resources and visitor experience at RAF Cosford with the Cold War Museum. And I was a trustee there for 5 years and responsible for bringing in that project. And again, today it's a world-class museum on your doorstep. If you haven't visited us, I would urge you to go and have a look. It's an amazing setup. And then I was fortunate enough to be knighted for services to the technology industry. It wasn't just an honour to me personally, but the recognition of what we tried to achieve as a company and realising this vision I've talked about over the preceding years. But 2000 was also when my initial vision to build an international business really became a reality. It's one thing running a business in your own town or your own country. It's a very different thing when you step out into the greater world and you're dealing with issues of language and culture and different types of competition and different expectations. And in one bold move, we acquired a pan-European group across 6 key European territories: the Netherlands, Belgium, France, Spain, Germany, and Italy. So we took on 6 different separate organizations, all in IT, ostensibly under a similar group which simply operated independent businesses. And over the years, used that as the basis for our international business and integrated them into our group. In fact, up to 2 years ago, we were represented in 40 countries worldwide, with operations in 40 countries. And hence, we were not just national, we were truly international. We weren't just European. We have business interests in Africa and in Asia. And it's a different milestone in building a business when you step outside of the territory you know and love and you start dealing in this bigger global marketplace. Today, it's essential in business that you have an international capability, and particularly in technology, because it's all pervasive. It's fundamentally the same technology that exists in all these different territories. And looking back, this took a lot of courage. One of the things that I did was, having had this basic principle of creating a business on my own funding, of not borrowing money, I had to change that principle and start to borrow money to take on a business of this scale. In fact, in 2002, when we made this international move, I paid £100 million to acquire this group of companies. You know, £2,000 seemed a lot at the time, and then, you know, I'm writing commitments out for £100 million. So it was a big change. Now, information technology has always been an international business, and we've always had this international presence, and we also learned to work with partnerships and alliances in doing that, because another lesson is that you can't do everything yourself. And sometimes it is a better route to have a cooperation and an alliance with another organization in order to deliver the scope of products or services that you want to do. Whilst I've been talking about the importance of having a clear vision in relation to our core technology business, SCC, the same is equally true of our other divisions. 15 years ago, I had the opportunity to turn a real interest into a successful business. I'd always been fascinated by hotels and restaurants, as a customer, I stress. And I acquired my first hotel in the Midlands, a place called Mallory Court. I think there's a picture of it behind me, just outside Leamington Spa, which had been my favourite hotel and restaurant. It was no more complicated than the fact that it was in trouble and I was able to acquire it because I knew it. That hotel is one of 9 listed buildings that now form this Eden Hotel Collection. It's a group of small country house hotels, and 2 months ago it won the AA Best Small Hotel Group in the UK award. And in fact today I learned that the local hotel, which is Brockencote Hall in Worcestershire, Chaddesley Corbett, just down the road from here, for the 3rd successive year is the best hotel in Worcestershire. So a bit of a commercial for the hotel there. You're all very welcome to visit these hotels. I'm sure they're delighted to see people. So I suppose I turned a hobby into a business, except that that's being a little bit dismissive, because a business is a business, and you rapidly have to come to terms with the fact it needs to be profitable, it involves people, it needs to grow, it requires investment, it has competition and so on. So it's a little hobby suddenly becomes a business. And then my other passion in life has always been flying. When I was at school, I was in the OTC, and I then went to the ATC and learned to glide and learned to fly. And then I was awarded a scholarship to the Royal Air Force College at Cranwell, a sort of aviation equivalent to Sandhurst, if you like. And then my father lost his eyesight and ended up in a very distressed situation, and I decided that I had to get a job. So I chucked in the scholarship and I took a job. I didn't go to university, and I say that in front of all these highly qualified people here. I didn't go to university, but I worked, very fortunately, I ended up just through a family connection working for a large IT group. And that's where I learned my computing skills and understanding effectively in an apprenticeship. But I'd always harboured this interest in aviation. And 10 years ago, I acquired a very small aviation company, renamed it as Patriot Aviation, based at Cranfield. And then I've developed that business through other acquisitions, and now have the largest British-owned helicopter business, a company called British International Helicopters, which does serious flying, mainly for the military, in the Falklands, does all the flying in the training areas for the Royal Navy, and also does air medical evacuation and police and stuff like that. So I got there in the end, and of course through all that I do fly a lot. I'm still a current helicopter pilot and fixed-wing pilot. So a hobby became a business again, and I have to say I fly less now because I'm involved in the business when I go there than I used to fly when I hadn't got that business, but there we are. And next year then we celebrate our 40 years in business, but our vision gets ever more ambitious. We want to take the growth that we've had over the last 40 years and double it in the next 10. And in the last 18 months, despite the difficult business climate, we've made 11 significant acquisitions as a private company. That's unusual. So, on a broader basis, I think it's vitally important to have clear goals about what you want to do and where you want to go at a particular point in time, even though that can change, as in my case, quite dramatically by circumstance. Successfully delivering your business vision is totally dependent on a few more key entrepreneurial beliefs. You have to have courage. Don't be afraid to stand on your own 2 feet. Use what you've learned and apply it. And in my book, you have to lead from the front. I've always believed that success ultimately comes to people who believe in themselves and know what they want to achieve. You just have to keep your head down and be determined. And self-belief is an underrated quality. The only person who can stop you achieving your potential is you. But you must trust and you must be trusted. I've always believed in operating ethically and professionally in business. You have to live by your own standards and principles, and you have to earn respect. Money never should be, and never is, in my experience of the most successful people I've met, it has never been the prime motivator to succeed in business. You need to invest back in order to create something longer lasting and more substantial. For years, I didn't take a salary out of the business. If I did, it was purely to exist, because every penny that I was able to create went back into the business. Today, I meet people, the first thing they want to do is take a fat salary out of the business, a nice motor car and all that sort of thing. That comes with success. It shouldn't come as the first thing that you think the business owes you. You've got to create that success first of all. I've always been committed to building something long-lasting and substantial in business terms, and also putting something back in the broader sense of the benefit of the communities that we serve. And that, in essence, is what my group of companies is about. And today, it's not me, it's many people. We have 7,500 people now working in the group. Being successful in business, especially entrepreneurial business, is totally dependent on the entrepreneurial skills that you have. The better your entrepreneurial skills, the more you will be able to exercise this competitive advantage. Anyone can buy companies if they have the money, or indeed can raise the money. The trick is in making them work, both as individual businesses and as a whole. And the entrepreneurial trick is to spot the market opportunity to either start up a new business or invigorate or turn around an existing one. In the 40 years or so I've been building my businesses, we've made 70 acquisitions and done 65 startups. In virtually every case, they've been strategic, but often also opportunistic, and we have successfully integrated those into our main businesses. Having said that, it's not a sin to fail. Good entrepreneurs are incredibly optimistic by nature about markets and opportunities. In 1995, following a visit to the United States, I was convinced there was a market opportunity to bring the benefits of IT to the consumer, to individual customers, as we have done and still do today with businesses. And at that time, I sought the advice of a person I thought was a retail guru, a man called Terence Conran, and we founded from scratch, with no knowledge of retailing, a group of computer superstores. They were called Byte, and they were the hottest thing on the market at the time. They were really very elegant stores, and the technology was great, and the advice we gave was first class. It seemed a good idea at the time, but we missed one very important fact, that the new consumer of PC technology wasn't interested in that sort of advice and the nice surroundings and the skilled and informed staff. All they wanted was the cheapest deal. And quality and low cost don't always go hand in hand. And begrudgingly, we ended up selling that store to PC World, which became part of the Dixons Group. So when you see a PC World store, probably one of those stores used to be mine. They've got a lot more. So I'd like to make an important point here, which is that failure can be turned to business advantage. I'm informed that you have the word here in your institution of pivoting. Apparently pivoting means that you take a failure and reshape it to turn it into a business advantage. And whilst we sold this particular business before it became a problem, we redefined the knowledge gained to benefit our existing businesses. You always learn from something that doesn't work out, I think. So competitive advantage means you need to be aware of what's happening in the market and to take opportunities. As I mentioned earlier, flying started as a hobby for me, but I saw the business potential some 10 years ago. Our aviation businesses have grown, and a new opportunity presented itself around airports and airport management, and specifically regional airports. So in 2010, we acquired our first airport. It was quite tricky. It was Coventry Airport, which we acquired from a receiver. I knew the airport because I kept my aircraft there. And when it closed, it was very inconvenient. So I thought, well, you know, here's an opportunity. So we bought Coventry out of receivership, turned it round, and it's now fully operational. And that in itself was a story about how you deal with the Civil Aviation Authority and all the difficulties of rebooting the airport to start again and all the regulatory things that you have to do. Unfortunately, in business, there is red tape to cope with as well. However, we've steadily grown that airport. We now have an airport management business called Regional City Airports, and we bought Exeter Airport and we bought Norwich Airport, and we manage a couple of other airports, 3 other airports in fact. And that is an interesting business in that it's about enhancing connectivity, it's about relationships with communities, where airports in places like East Anglia or the southwest of England are very much an integral part of the fabric of the society and the region. And then airports throw up other opportunities, basically development opportunities. And at Coventry, what I saw at the beginning was the opportunity to create a large central business park. And we have this project called the Coventry Gateway, which is creating the infrastructure for 14,000 jobs. And you know, business is always full of challenges, and dealing with the planning authorities in this country and getting things done is a new learning for me in the last 4 or 5 years, particularly around this project. But it will happen, I believe, and it will become a major business location for the West Midlands. And currently we're wrestling with the Secretary of State to get his decision on this by the end of this year. And again, you know, another example where you have to be determined, patient sometimes. Not all entrepreneurs and business people exhibit patience. It's not necessarily going with the genre, but you do have to sometimes find that patience. Perhaps the best example of spotting a market opportunity and having the courage to change is, however, in our core business of information technology, which is it's 95% of everything we do in terms of volume. And that was the introduction of cloud services. Most of you here, I guess, are computer literate. And in the last few years, and in the coming few years, we will see the most huge sea change in the way people relate to technology and apply technology, particularly in business. And the old ways of client-server computing and of having local area networks and so on are going out of the window. And the idea of delivering information across the internet from a data center, and a cloud is simply a data center, is going to provide a new way of accessing technology, where you simply pay, in principle, for the software you use or the technology you use when you use it. You don't have to buy licenses, you don't have to build your own computer room. You basically have the application served from a cloud. Now, if I was starting up tomorrow, that would be great, because I wouldn't have a legacy business to manage, to transition, to take advantage of that technology. And that is a challenge which is quite evident right across the whole of the IT industry, from Microsoft or IBM down, because they have such large legacy businesses with traditional means of delivering technology. They too now have to transition their customers and their offerings to the cloud. And to a smaller extent, we have the same problem in my technology businesses. So what we did in the middle of the recession was we built the first secure technology platform for government, which has the nature of the use of technology there is that it's highly sensitive information. So the security around the technology is very, very complex. And we built that without a remit from anybody, but simply a belief that cloud computing would become the order of the day at some stage, and that we had to invest in order to get there. And we became the first authorized deliverer of secure computing for government in the country. Big investment. We have not seen a payback on the investment. We'll get a payback, I guess, in the future. But we have initiated that transition from going from one place to another in terms of the capability of our business. And technology is unforgiving as a business. You can be very successful with this product and then lose it overnight if you haven't got other products or you haven't got other capabilities. And that's one lesson I've learned. And 40 years in business in the same company, delivering technology is not the order of the day. If I look at most of my competitors, they're 5 or 10 years old. So this is this business of sustaining things. And I think that's a key facet of business. So this investment tied up a considerable skill pool and to fund the creation of the range of services which are now a key offering in our business. One last key point on key entrepreneurial skills and competitive advantage. However exciting the opportunities are, however much vision and determination and self-belief you have in your ability to deliver a successful result, you have to recognize the limits of your capacity. There will never be a shortage of opportunities, but it's knowing which ones to concentrate on, and that is a key part of the real success. I'm often asked these days why I've been successful, and I put it down to hard work, to energy, and to enthusiasm. I've done lots of things by intuition and gut feeling. I'm sure if I'd have gone to Oxford or Harvard as a business school, I'd have probably done things differently. But I don't think I would have done a lot of the things that I have done. Whether I did them out of ignorance or really just gut feeling and instinct, I'd like to think it was the last thing rather than the former. So I've always wanted to do my own thing without borrowing, but I did have to borrow in the end. I like to be in control as a private company. Some people have entirely different views. They would like to do an IPO on a business, or they would like to sell out and move on. I've never wanted to do that. I've been more prepared to run with the business and run with the people in the business, I might say, because you can't do all these things on your own. You've got to have good people with you, and you've got to look after them. So I've never cashed in my chips, which keeps my energy and focus on the business. And I said it before, but I'll say it again. I find most successful people who create things are not driven by money. If you're successful, the financial aspect takes care of itself. But it's that creative instinct, it's that need to deliver something, it's that goal that you set that you want to achieve that is the real driving force. And what makes me get up in the morning is that I enjoy what I do. I'm proud of the quality of the business that's been built, and I'm committed to the people who've helped me to do it. When we look forward to our next 10 years, I think it's essential that we redefine and reset perceptions on entrepreneurship and the contribution it makes to British economic growth. Creating good jobs for all requires an environment that respects and supports business success. And if we are to achieve this, I believe that businesses and entrepreneurs need greater consideration. And that must begin with greater respect for the fact that business creates the jobs that everybody needs. This isn't a local or a regional issue. It demands a national campaign to change public perceptions. There's a fundamental imbalance, in my opinion, between the public perception of business and the people who own and run successful businesses. It is not a sin to be successful in business and indeed to generate wealth. And whilst many other countries appreciate and respect successful entrepreneurs and business leaders, in my opinion, this country has yet to learn to do so. In markets that are global, our overseas competitors value highly our people and facilities and are always looking to recruit and recognise the education, the skills, creativity and tenacity of British technicians, managers and senior executives. It's imperative that we fight to not only retain their skills and services, but to transform the overall environment in which they will operate. If business is going to contribute fully in business-led engagement with local government, then there must be recognition, reward and compensation to attract effective business people. So in addition to resetting public perceptions, a successful future partnership between business and government requires a healthy and sensible tax regime at both personal employment and corporate levels. Growth will come from established businesses and inward investment, with the bulk coming from organic growth in both domestic and export markets. It's vital to support local businesses in parallel with attracting business from inward investment. Companies won't invest unless the tax regime encourages investment. Entrepreneurs and investors need good returns and rewards on their skill and effort and investments. And behind this, there's also an urgent need to realign and reskill our educational systems to complement business needs. Britain has fallen well behind its competitors in terms of literacy and numeracy. Further education and university education, all of which are critical to opportunity, employment and a good quality of life. And this means a stronger emphasis on sciences and engineering, business-led management skills, languages, and appreciation of the work ethic and energy and enthusiasm essential to succeed in the workplace and in business. Exposure to the workplace from an academic journey is extremely important. And the good news for you is that I think your leadership team in this university are highly attuned to that. So what would an environment that encouraged entrepreneurs be like? Well, for a start, we'd stop fearing failure and recognise the contribution of those who are prepared to take that risk. I haven't used the word risk in this address tonight, but risk is written across everything you do in business, particularly if you're an entrepreneur. In America, nobody is vilified for going bust. Pioneers who reach for success but fail are valued for their experience, and there's a real tendency to encourage them to try again. If you contrast that with the UK, if you fail and you try and get funding for another venture, it's extremely difficult and often quite impossible. So what encouragement does that offer the upcoming generation? This country has always fostered tremendous potential, particularly in the field of research and development, generating good ideas and then often seeing them exported to countries to exploit and take commercial advantage of. And now we face major competition from abroad. We must meet it head on, and we need driven entrepreneurial young people to rise to the challenge. If we don't, we will undoubtedly lose our place on the global stage. So, ladies and gentlemen, to conclude, I sincerely hope that I've shared sufficient insights and experiences of my entrepreneurial journey to motivate and encourage you to explore this entrepreneurial talent that I know many of you have. I hope you've all taken heart and will raise the bar on your own particular visions and aspirations going forward. Without vision, there are no sustainable businesses. Without entrepreneurial skills, UK PLC will lose its competitive edge on the international stage. And if we do not reset and redefine perceptions around the vital importance of entrepreneurship to our future economic growth, will never foster and promote a culture where entrepreneurs thrive. Thank you for your attention, and I wish you every success in your own business enterprises. Thank you.
Thank you, Lorraine Francis. So Peter, you put a huge amount into Millennium Point in cash and your own time. Do you feel that there's an opportunity for an entrepreneurial spirit in the public sector in the West Midlands to perhaps continue and build on some of the good work that you did that perhaps hasn't gone at the pace that we all would have liked?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. The most recent putting back project, if that's the phrase, that I've done was, until a couple of months ago, I was chairman of the Local Enterprise Partnership for Coventry and Warwickshire. And the idea of the Local Enterprise Partnership is that it is a business leader and a group of business people who will work with local government, under central government, together with the universities. And the expression herding cats comes to mind. Getting district councils who've been at war for 40 years with county councils who are totally opposed to city councils to work together, to sit around the same table and to agree on something is not easy. So, I mean, I do think it's essential that we recognise that the public services that we want to have, health, education, defence, social security if you need it, all those things are paid for out of taxes. Taxes are generated by creating wealth. Wealth is created by business. And I think a lot of people forget that. And this is why I make the point to you that business is important, that being successful isn't just something that should be knocked, and this notion of wealth being obscene. And I agree some people behave in that manner, but the whole principle of creating wealth is the thing that affords the services we want. And they should work together. And I would encourage any successful businessman to certainly examine his success and say, what am I doing now to put back? Whether it could be mentoring somebody in a university environment, giving them the benefit of your experience, or it could be trying to persuade the public sector of the need to work with business, or for them to recognise what business does. That can be on a committee, and I'm not talking politically here. I personally have never brought my politics into business. I don't think you should do. But, you know, you don't have to be politically minded to want to make that sort of input. So it is important to work with them. Yeah.
Hi, my name's Neil Young. I work at the University of Wolverhampton. As an entrepreneur, you've spotted lots of great ideas and turned them into successes. And my understanding is that other people have had great ideas, for example, put patents in or whatever, 90-odd% of patents don't make money. Have you any comments about spotting opportunities?
Well, I mean, ideas are either an original idea or they're a copy, aren't they? You know, I don't know how many ideas are truly original. Somebody surely thought of that at some point in time, sort of thing. Or if you go abroad. I mean, it used to be entirely possible, for example, in the IT industry, to go to the US, to go to Silicon Valley, or to go to probably Japan. I used to do all those things when I was building businesses. And you would see new technologies, and you'd say, that could be applied here. You know, you saw solutions that could be modified and adapted to an industry sector or something like that. So were you being innovative, or were you simply copying something? And then you do actually see genuine gaps in a market. And that is a different thing, because you haven't got a benchmark against which to compare what you might do. And I personally have always had more satisfaction from creating something rather than acquiring something that existed from somebody else, where if I'm lucky, I might be able to improve that. But it's not as satisfying as doing something yourself. And I'll tell you a story. Actually, one of my sons, who didn't go to university either, it was something to do with the family strain, I think, came to me when he was 17. He said, "Dad, I know I've got to work for you at some stage. We may as well get it over with now." And he came to work for me. He's still there, and he's 39. He's still there. And about 7 or 8 years ago, he came to me and said, I can't spend the rest of my business life in your shadow. I know I'm very good at what I do, but I've got to prove it. And we agreed that he would exit. I told this story to Anthea. We agreed that he would leave the business in a controlled way, and he went out and he wanted to do two bizarre things. One was start a magazine, and the other was start up a property development business, neither of which he had any experience of. The magazine flopped in 6 weeks, and he chose 2008 to go into the property business, which wasn't a great idea. And he came back to me and said, "Dad, look, I need a job," basically. So he came back into the business. We kept the property company going, and it's now part of our portfolio of businesses. So was Steve an entrepreneur? I don't know. He had a go, and he didn't make it. But if he'd have done that in, say, 2005, it probably would have done that. So timing, is another factor in success. So the idea's got to be right, as this gentleman's suggesting, but also timing is important as well. Get the two together, and that's a good combination.
Peter Westbrook, you've got, 7,500 employees now. How do you actually get the maximum out of them? How do you actually sort of inculcate the entrepreneurship that you've got, or how do you encourage it? Because there must be quite a few there that are that way inclined, and so you can actually develop your business to achieve your doubling of turnover.
How do you do that? Well, if you run a big business, you don't have to just be an entrepreneur, you have to be a good manager. You've got to learn to delegate. You've got to recognise talent, you've got to support talent, you've got to grow talent, you've got to import talent to develop a business. And they are management skills, not necessarily an entrepreneur's skills. If you've got entrepreneurial leadership, and you've got a good team of people, then that's probably a good combination. Many entrepreneurs are lousy managers, to be frank. They don't necessarily grow the business to the scale they could go to. They either sell out, or it collapses, or venture capital comes in, or whatever it is people do these days to take the business forward. So I think ideally you need to couple these entrepreneurial skills, these risk-taking skills, this ability to see an opportunity and to go for it. That's fine. But when you've got a mature business behind you, especially when it's a complex business or a multifaceted business such as my group, you've got to have good people around you. And you've got to learn to look after those people and develop those people. So delegation is fine. If entrepreneurs have a failing, and I put myself in that category, it is that you tend to do a lot of things yourself when you shouldn't do. because you think you can do it better than somebody else can, which of course is not necessarily the case. So, I don't encourage sort of micromanaging things, but nonetheless, when you've got a good idea, it's like having a baby. You don't want to let it go. You want to stay with it and nurture it and grow it.
Hi, my name is Bassel. I'm from Aston Business School. First, thank you very much for this interesting talk. As Rigby is one of the largest corporates in the UK, how do you manage to keep everything under control, especially during the last recession, without losing any one of the business units that you own?
Well, we tied a lot of things down. We didn't lose sight of what we were trying to do. For example, we did not make any one of our planned investments in the last 7 years. Every project that we said we had to do to take the business forward, and particularly, as I've explained, to transform the cornerstone business, we made. So I think the first thing is don't panic. Keep calm, as they say on the posters. You probably have to focus your business more. There are some peripheral activities that you might think are nice to have, but you can't follow. You have to really fight your competition, not overextend yourselves. I mean, I think the biggest thing that has fouled business in the last 5 years is over-leveraged businesses, where it was easy to borrow money and then very difficult to service the covenants and the interest on that money. So overextending yourself is not a great idea. And frankly, if you started with £2,000, it's good training. It makes you very conscious. It's your money, it's your energy, and you look after it. And in hard times, you really do have to look after it very carefully. We never found ourselves in trouble with banks, even though we ended up borrowing. We always stuck within the limits. We were always quite cautious about that aspect. So it's good housekeeping is a simple answer to your question.
Thanks very much. It's a really interesting speech. Thank you very much. There's a lot of talk in the public sector, particularly local government, that it needs to be more entrepreneurial. Do you think that's possible?
No. I don't think I've ever met an entrepreneur in local government, or in central government, for that matter. I'd be afraid of them if they were trying to be entrepreneurial. They'd screw it up.
Hi there, I represent the younger generation here. I was wondering, as you're an entrepreneur, you've taken many risks, and what's the biggest risk you've taken that's paid off?
Well, I don't know the answer to that without trawling through a lot of things that have happened. I don't know, really. I suppose that initial step, doing what you really want to do. And if you say you're young, I represent the older generation, by the way. If you've got a decent job, for example, but you know you can do something else, and you've got this thing inside you that says, I'm going to have a try, then that's a big step. And that's probably the first major risk you take. And one thing I didn't bring out, which I should have done in this discussion, is knowledge of your subject matter is absolutely essential in my book. You have to be good at what you do if you're then going to take that knowledge and that vocation into an entrepreneurial framework. It's essential, because you've got, you know, it can be very lonely running your own business, believe me, especially when you start on your own. You know, you get an office in when I started, you didn't have a PC, but today you'd be sitting there behind your PC in your nice little office, and you think, my God, you know, I need some business, I need some orders. And, you know, it really comes home to you that you are there. Maybe you've got some advice, you know, you've got a wife or a partner or a husband or whatever. You've got maybe a bank manager who probably I wouldn't trust anyway. You know, you maybe have some people you can talk to. But it's, this gentleman here would know exactly what I'm talking about. You are on your own there. And when things go wrong, you think, my God, what have I done here? You know, you haven't got the comfort of a pension scheme or a salary coming in, or, you know, I can go and work for so-and-so. You really are stuck with it, because you've probably got a bank loan there, or you may have foolishly mortgaged your house or something like that. You've got to make it work. So that initial decision, if you think it through before you do it, is probably, to answer your question, the biggest risk.
Bill Keeley, ISG Construction. So Peter, do you think programs like The Apprentice actually help entrepreneurs or not? Because it seems very much your ethic of working ethically and honestly and trust and be trusted. Is that showing a younger generation actually a good way to work?
No, absolutely not. Oddly enough, I have never seen The Apprentice until last night. And I was flicking through the channels, and this was on. And did anybody see The Apprentice last night? Yeah. It was something to do with selling candles and making candles. And there was a young man there who reminded me of a barrow boy. And he was vilified by Mr. Sugar, who can be extremely rude and unpleasant. And he said, you know, you've sold everything for the lowest price. You know, you should be in a market stall. And I thought, there's the pot calling the kettle black. Because that, to me, is exactly what he is. He is not a businessman. He made his money out of property and selling his shares in Spurs, not in technology, as he would like to pretend. If that is entrepreneurialism and that is business, I don't want to be a businessman. I'm sorry, but you know, that's my honest answer. Any fans of Anna Sugar here, I apologise.
Martin Chambers from the Shaler Group. Peter, you talk about entrepreneurship, etc. But just take us back a little bit in your life. Who were the visionaries, the luminaries that you really looked up to and wanted to sort of emulate?
I wanted to be in the Air Force. And when I was growing up, my heroes were all fighter pilots and what have you. And my regret until later life was I didn't go and do that myself. And in business, they weren't so much iconic figures. They were just people at a moment in time. Perhaps I worked for them or with them, and I saw things in them that I thought were, you know, to be admired. But I don't think I ever had anybody, and I don't think this is a clever thing to say, I don't think I ever had anybody that I really looked up to and thought, I would like to be like you, to be honest with you. In a sense, I wish I had, because I see nothing wrong in that. And I think today, it's essential that young people have those type of figures at all levels to look at. Because, you know, society is different today than it was, you know, 40 years ago. Nothing wrong with that, but I cannot say that there was any one person, to be honest with you. I've met many fine business people in my careers. And one last little story, just to finish on. When I was first introduced to technology, I worked for a company called Honeywell. I rose to the dizzy heights of being the branch manager in the Midlands for them. And I had a man working for me called Roger Carr, who was a salesman. And I worked out eventually that I wanted to do my own thing. He worked out eventually that he wanted to work for a public company. Roger Carr, or Sir Roger Carr as he is today, is the chairman of British Aerospace. It doesn't get better than that. And he's been the chairman of Centrica and the chairman of Bass Charrington and goodness knows what. And every now and then we bump into each other. And, it's a friendship that goes back 40 years. So he used to work for me as a salesman. And he's always, he looks up to me and I look down on him because I was the boss. But he's done extremely well. And I said to Roger, if I'd have gone into a public company, I would have liked to have done what you've done, particularly to be the chairman of British Aerospace. And he said to me, Peter, I wish I'd done what you've done, because you've made more money than me. Thank you.